Hey everybody, welcome on into another episode of WRAL Triangle and 2. I am Luis Fernandez. He is Mark Bergin.
Indianapolis did not disappoint. The cuisine, which we'll talk about here on the back half of the show, Luis, was absolutely terrific. And I've got to thank my guy, Ike Taylor, providing the opportunity to be able to go, something I'll remember for the rest of my life. But Luis, let's get into it because there's a lot of ties to the triangle that I want to talk about it when it comes to the combine.
First of many trips. Hopefully, Mark Bergin to the NFL Combine for you.
We're manifesting it.
We're manifesting it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with, from a triangle perspective, right? The big pictures, the big talking points oftentimes over the Combine, the quarterbacks. And Drake Maye is the premier guy out of the triangle right now. I know a lot of people will talk about Payton Wilson, Tez Walker, folks like that. We'll get into them in a second. But let's talk about the quarterbacks first. One of the things, the whispers you hear during the Combine and this time between NFL offseason beginning and the actual NFL draft, are players going up? Are they going down the boards? And right now, Mark Bergin, it kind of sounds like Drake Maye is slipping maybe from like 2 to 3, but there's some movement there at the top.
Yeah, and the big question was, okay, Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall. Right now, the Bears have that first overall pick. Who's the next quarterback off the board? Is it Maye or is it LSU's Jaden Daniels? And I was trying to glean this weekend of like, who is it going to be? Selfishly, I would have loved to see all three throw at the Combine, and that did not happen. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, and Daniels did not throw and did not participate in any on-field drills this weekend. So, okay, the top 3 picks, you've got the Commanders at number 2. They have a ton of salary cap space. They have new ownership. They have new GM. Paint your picture, a blank canvas, and they also have Sam Howell, Drake Maye's college teammate, on the roster as well. I think it would ease the transition. But then New England, if it's Daniels or Maye, are the Patriots going to be satisfied and happy with whichever quarterback falls to them at number 3? I think that's where this conversation starts, but there's been some chatter that Maye could fall out of the top 3, which I don't think I'm buying quite yet, but we'll talk about it, Luis.
Yeah, it's always, you hear just a lot of like conversations, a lot of talk, if you will. I think earlier when we were talking about the NFL Combine, you called it the Underwear Olympics, and that's true.
That's what it is.
It's a lot of people running in a straight line, doing drills like that. So and there's always a bit of gamesmanship when it comes to NFL draft talk, right? Sometimes people are trying to make a prospect maybe seem a little bit better than they are. Sometimes maybe they talk them down a little bit, try and see what's going on there. I don't see any way Drake Maye falls out of the top 3 as long as there's no kind of like trades or anything like that. But I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are very good. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels, they all have arm talent. I would put Drake Maye and Caleb Williams kind of in a different category than Jaden Daniels in terms of arm talent. They all have the ability to create. None of them are perfect prospects by any means. But I think if you're Drake Maye, right, you want to go to the best situation there. And of those top 3 teams picking, which it's wild to say this, but I do feel like the Commanders might be the best spot just because of the veteran playmakers that are there and ownership essentially starting fresh.
Yeah, the salary cap space, I could maybe argue Chicago, but as long as the Bears have the top pick, that's where Williams is going. Assuming they don't trade it. Again, all of this is contingent upon trades. Definitely. With Daniels, I think maybe your upside is higher than Maye. What I would say with Daniels is he's got to be more than just a 1 or 2 read guy if it's not their take off and run, because at LSU this past Heisman season, he doesn't really know how to slide, Luis. If you pop on the tape, he does not know how to slide.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I think it was Mina Kimes maybe who I saw tweet this, but essentially called his running style very Looney Tunes-esque, where it's like he'll like jump and just like throw his body out there and just get absolutely decked sometimes. Drake Maye at least got better, I think, of avoiding major contact this year, but he kind of had a little bit of that in him too his first year. Yeah, like I said, Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, I think they're in a league above when it comes to their arm talent, at least when compared to Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. I do think Jaden Daniels throws a good deep ball, but I don't know if he has necessarily like the zip that you need. Yeah, so I think it's going to kind of be like a what are you looking for?
And we'll talk about the receivers here in a second when we get to Tez Walker, but Daniels was also the beneficiary of having two stud receivers this past season at
Yeah,
LSU. It's not to say Drake Maye didn't have that with Tez Walker this past year, and then Josh Downs a year ago, who's an NFL player. But to have both of those guys in Neighbors and Thomas on your team at the same time, they were big contributors in what was a Heisman season for him as well.
yeah,
So you have to keep that in mind as well when you're evaluating these players is what's the talent like around them and what are they doing? And, the argument for May would be maybe he's doing more with less. I know Marion Hampton's really talented as well from a UNC standpoint, but that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're doing these evaluations. And, how they play in college doesn't always project the same way to the pros. We'll see what May does at his pro day too, because we can get enamored of a player working out in cutoffs and shorts, right? Like we saw it several years ago. I remember BYU's pro day with Zach Wilson when he's thrown across his body and everyone fell in love. He hasn't done much with the Jets in the NFL, Lewis. So
no,
it's not an exact science. And if it were, you'd have a better success rate than like 30 or 40% of
yeah.
quarterbacks hitting when you draft them at any round of the NFL draft. Go ahead.
The one thing I'll say too is I think a lot of I've like just seen people talking, and I think some of the more like ignorant folks in terms of Drake Maye are relating him to like Mitch Trubisky,
No,
or
no,
I've
no,
heard some like Zach Wilson comps, and I'm like,
no.
no,
So
that's just it's people who are saying that kind of stuff. I just they never watched him play.
the only commonality is that they both played for North Carolina with Trubisky. Yeah. Here's what I mean by that. You have two years of starting versus Mitch's one when he was at UNC. Different coaching schemes. There was a different head coach than to say, okay, Mac Brown. And here's another thing with May too, which I credit him for. This would be a pro, an asset, if you will. He had a different offensive coordinator this past season than Luongo was there the year before, when he made a name for himself where it was like, whoa, who's this guy that came out of nowhere? We weren't sure what we would have at the quarterback position when Howell left North Carolina early to go to the league. So to say he's Mitch Trubisky, like you're not watching any tape and not understanding what's going on behind the scenes, particularly when it comes to there's different head coaches, totally different schemes. Anyone watching this, I want to shut that narrative down from the jump, Lewis.
Yeah. All three of these top quarterback prospects have flaws. It's just going to be who you like more, really. Okay, let's stick with UNC offensive players, though, and go from Drake Maye to his wide receiver, Tez Walker. So Walker, I'm going to just read off his main numbers from the combine here, Mark. A 4.36 40, pretty fast, with a 1.54 10-yard split, a 40.5-inch vert, and an 11.2 broad jump. So what does all of that mean? He's athletic. That's really the main takeaway. That's what you learn from there. He's fast and athletic. What were your thoughts on what Tez Walker was able to do this weekend?
Let me go with what he told reporters and then go to what I saw on the field. When he was asked, hey, describe your game in 3 words, very, very fast. And what he is saying and how he performed, we're in sync, Lewis, because you read off the 40-yard dash and you go, wow, that seems pretty fast, but okay, how is that relative to the other receivers on the board? You're talking about the 4th fastest 40 time of any wide receiver that participated in this year's combine, Lewis. And then I look at, okay, the other measures of explosiveness, which is a key component of the receiver position, 40.5-inch vertical, that was 5th best among the wide receivers, an 11-foot 2-inch broad jump, 2nd among all wide receivers. So you say, Mark, is this guy a football player? Is he a track and field guy? Is he going to be a future Olympian? What I saw was the fluidity getting in and out of breaks. And we saw it when he plays Miami this last year, his coming out party, and he has 3 touchdowns in a game. The fluidity, and when I talk to people in and around the league, scouts, that's what they noticed is how he moves and how he's going to be able to take the top off an opposing defense. That's how he's going to make his bones. And if he played a full season, Lewis, potentially you'd be talking about a 1st-round pick. I think a lot of people are just going to look at the stats and say, oh, these aren't that good. Remember, he missed several games because of the ineligibility issues with the NCAA.
I think age will also play a little bit of a factor that with
Mhm.
that. And it's I think the way people look at the draft more and more is you want to trend younger and younger and younger. You want people who break out early because then that kind of trends towards more production as you continue to grow into your body. But no, I mean I think Tez Walker is going to be someone who probably would be a second day guy. If depending on what the run
Mhm.
of receivers is like, maybe tail end of the first round, but he's the wide receivers and the offensive lineman is specifically
Loaded,
offensive tackle deep this year in the draft.
loaded.
Deep.
That's you're
Um,
not lying. You're not lying, Lewis.
so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, what is it going to look like this year versus what would it look like other years? But
Mm,
Tez Walker definitely did not hurt himself this weekend. I would put it that way. Let's go
no.
to another guy, Mark, who I think really got circled by a lot of people this weekend based on his performance. That's Payton Wilson, linebacker from NC State. Now, if you watched NC State at all this year, if you watch ACC football at all this year, you know how good Payton Wilson is. But it's just kind of continuing to see him grow on the national side of things. His numbers, I'll read them off once again: a 4.43, fastest 40 of all linebackers. That 10-yard split, by the way, 154. That's the exact same 10-yard split as Tez Walker, which is interesting. That tells you there's a lot of explosion in what he does. 34.5-inch vert and 9.11 broad jump. So, I mean, all you need to do with Peyton Wilson, I think, is turn on the tape. I mean, that's really all you need to know. I saw them comparing him statistically to Luke Kuechly. Future Hall of Famer, most likely out of Carolina Panthers. You don't need to hear me talk about Luke Kuechly, but I think Peyton Wilson is just going to continue to broaden his horizons on a national perspective as we get closer and closer to the draft process, and then it just becomes how do people value linebackers? That I think will
Mm,
determine ultimately where he gets picked.
definitely, Lewis. And the only word of warning I would have with Wilson is the same concern we have about Walker is that Wilson will be 24 by the time the season gets underway in the fall. Um, when he ran this time, and this is when I was getting into Indy on Thursday, I wasn't surprised because I thought back to September when NC State played Notre Dame, and I was at that game at Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh, and Peyton Wilson had a few runs where he's chasing down Notre Dame ball carriers, where NC State head coach Dave Dorn was quoted as saying, "This is the fastest we've ever tracked a player going 23 plus miles per hour on a football field. He's not driving a car." So when he ran that 4.44 I thought back to September when Dave Dorn said that following the loss to Notre Dame. That's what I thought of. And Lewis, I talked to a scout this weekend, and he told me, he goes, "Mark, listen, the guys he tracked down from Notre Dame, those guys are 4.3, 4.4 guys.
Yeah.
And you have a linebacker running that fast? Flying, Lewis.
Yeah.
Flying."
Peyton Wilson definitely helped himself this weekend. Excited to see
Made
where
himself
he
some money.
continues. Oh, yeah.
Let me
Excited to
say
see where he
one
continues to grow.
let me
Yeah.
say one other thing. A different scout I talked to about Wilson also told me this. It's not just his relentless pursuit of the football, but the angles that he takes to chase down opposing ball carriers.
Yeah.
He knows how to play and attack gaps with the right speed, to have sound gap integrity, but to know how to blow up a play of, okay, I really need to turn on the afterburners now, or okay, I can. He knows how to use his speed to his advantage in the start and stop of what it takes at the linebacker position and controlling the front seven. We love quarterback play. We obsess with it, but it is a line of scrimmage game, Lewis.
Yeah. And we mentioned the 4.43 right? But once again, that 10-yard split at 154, that kind of shows you that explosion, that ability to attack in a gap behind the line of scrimmage, things along those lines. Now, bringing up the miles per hour thing like you did is interesting. And I
Mhm.
want to get into that because
Mhm.
we're going to last kind of little on field thing we're going to talk about here. Xavier Worthy breaking the 40-yard dash record. He ran a, what was it? 4.23. Is that
4.21.
right? Or
4.21.
4.21, excuse me. Jeez Louise. So he beat the previous record held by John Ross, a Washington wide receiver, 4.22. And so it's one of those things where, like, man, you're constantly shocked how people continue to evolve. Like, this is the way they run, how athletic they are, and things like that. What was it like being there in person when that broke, Mark?
It was the loudest Lucas Oil Stadium was all weekend. largest applause. And here's what you didn't see on TV that to me was the most incredible part. There were two aspects of this. Number one, he false started on both of his 40 attempts. So every single player participating in the combine gets 2 attempts. But before you start your run, you have to come to complete stillness for a full second. And the adrenaline and the nerves, and you're all keyed up and ready to go. He false started on both runs. So that happens. His first run was a 4.25, and that drew a huge reaction initially. And it was like, wow, he's really close. And that's the fastest we've seen all weekend. Clemson's Nate Wiggins the day before was at a 4.28, and he was flying. So he false starts and he decides he's going to run it again. And then when his unofficial time was 4.22, the place just exploded. It was on his second attempt. If you take a sample size of, say, 10 players, Lewis, 8 out of the 10, probably 9 out of the 10 run their faster 40 time on their first attempt, not their second attempt. And he broke the record on his second attempt. It was absolutely remarkable to see. We can talk some about, okay, just because you run a fast 40 time doesn't guarantee success in the NFL. Again, I'll go back to scouts I talked to this weekend, though. If he goes to a situation like Andy Reid in Kansas City, Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, if he goes to a Sean McVay in Los Angeles, Mike McDaniel in Miami, a brilliant offensive mind that knows how to use that speed, that's going to be the key for him, is the fit. Because if another team that has an inept offensive coordinator drafts this guy, he's going to be a luxury and they're not going to use him in the right ways. But to get to see history is really special, Lewis.
Wide receivers are so cool because there are so many different ways to play wide receiver, and there are so many different body types. You've got the Puka Nakubas, the Cooper Kupps, who kind of serve as almost like glorified tight ends in some ways. You've got the Tyreek Hills, top-notch speed. You've got the, Jamar Chases that are like, the muscle hamsters that are just like, packed, and they are fast, athletic, and strong. You've got the stereotypical DeAndre Hopkins, like those, classic long, tall, high-pointing wide receivers. So I think that if it's all about the fit, it's all about the system. But yes, do wide receivers who run fast 40s necessarily translate? No, they don't. Historically, honestly, they really don't translate that well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the NFL is continuing to evolve. The game is getting smarter. Coaches are getting smarter. And so there is a way for someone to use that kind of speed for sure.
Let me piggyback off that point too, Lewis, and you're spot on. Keon Coleman out of Florida State, a guy that a lot of ACC fans are familiar with. Go up and get it guy, basketball player, makes all the circus catches you could want. Runs a 4.64 in the 40, and you say, Mark, well, there are edge rushers and linemen that can run faster than that.
Yeah, that's low.
But when he underwent the gauntlet drill where he's got to run the wide length of the football field, 53.3 yards all the way across, he's flying at almost 20 miles per hour, it was close to 20 miles per hour, fastest you've seen. So with the ball in his hands, you see the 40 time, you say, he wasn't that fast. He looked just fine to me in terms of the fluidity and the movement when you actually track his miles per hour during the gauntlet drill. So don't take too much of this. It's the Underwear Olympics for a reason, but it is another step in the process for these players that they're trying to establish themselves as pros. You have 320 plus get invited to the combine, 250 plus slots get drafted. So it's that opportunity. And what might be even more important too, Lewis, is when the players get to meet with the teams, how they comport themselves. What kind of leadership do they have?
Sure.
What makes them tick? What motivates them? What's their body language like? There's a lot more to it than just what the measurables are at the combine. And it was amazing to be there. But again, it's just one component in the entire evaluation of a player when it comes to the NFL draft.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up here, Mark, one of the kind of, I guess a lot of people, when they go to the NFL combine, I've never been, so I'm taking your word for it. Going to places like St. Elmo's, the steakhouse that's over there. Just tell us a little bit about the weekend and what it was like for you.
It was an absolute delight. So I got in Thursday and I knew Friday and Saturday would be slammed. So I'm like, I'm going to St. Elmo's Steakhouse. It's an establishment. It's been there since 1902. So I get in and I had a lot of people say, you got to try the shrimp cocktail there. It is famous, world renowned. Thankfully, I was warned that it is spicy. It is a delight to
You're
the
not a big spicy
senses.
guy?
I'm not. I'm not. But when in Rome, you've got to do it. If you had any kind of sinus congestion, Lewis,
Mm,
you'd be cured immediately. Now, what I will
mm.
say is that heat goes away almost immediately. It does not linger, but it is intense. The shrimp cocktail there was fantastic. The steak there was fantastic. It was an incredible experience at St. Elmo. Saw a lot of people that I've done work with over the years. To get to see them not on screens, but in person was truly special. Again, I want to thank Ike Taylor. Had the chance to meet Reggie Wayne, had the chance to run into Jerry Rice on Saturday night. And, you see people in and around the league, coaches, scouts, GMs, just walking around downtown Indianapolis while you're there throughout the weekend. A lot of great media members. It is a great, great event because it brings pretty much anyone with an NFL background together in one place. And like you said off the top, I hope this is the first time of many that I get to attend the NFL Combine because it was a tremendous event. And all of the players, their families, their coaches, and the level of sacrifice that it took all of them, even just to get an invite, Lewis, to get to see that firsthand. I mean, I was sitting in the stands with mom of one of the running backs that was exercising. And when her son ran a 4.46 in the 40, tears were streaming down her face of happiness and joy because he's getting his opportunity to showcase his ability in this league where 92 of the top 100 watch broadcasts last year in 2023 were the NFL. So it was an amazing event. I hope I get the opportunity to go back. And it's been so much fun talking with you about the Combine. I could probably talk about it till sundown.
I was just thinking that we talk so much more about it too. How do you order your steak, Mark Bergin?
You know what? In the
Don't
Midwestern
say
in
it.
me, medium.
No,
Yeah. I could do medium rare,
disgusting.
but listen, I like the taste of medium rare, but there's a price to pay the next day with my stomach. So I got my
Okay,
steak medium, but
that's funny.
listen, you got to peel back the curtain for the listeners and the viewers of WRAL Triangle and 2, Lewis.
Just like the prospects, Mark. Nobody is perfect. That's okay. That's going to do it for us for the special edition of WRL Triangle and 2 talking the NFL Combine. I'm Luis Fernandez. He is Mark Bergin. Please feel free to give us a listen anywhere you listen to your podcasts. 5 stars, like and subscribe, all of that stuff. You can watch us on 99.9 The Fans YouTube page. Make sure you give them a like as well as subscribe to their channel. You can also watch us on WRL Sports Fan. Thank you so much. We will see you all coming up later this week when we will talk Duke and UNC Battle of the Blues Part 2.